This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Remember all those things we told you about tariffs yesterday? Well, never mind, nothing happened. As you know, President Trump set the auto industry on edge with threats to slap 25% tariffs on cars and components imported from Canada and Mexico. But after the show yesterday, he agreed to postpone them for a month because Canada and Mexico promised to take more action on preventing immigrants from illegally crossing the border and on stopping the flow of fentanyl. Even with the 1-month delay, the auto industry is still extremely nervous because we could just be going through the exact same things again at the beginning of March. VW dealers are gearing up their fight against the automaker over its plans to sell Scout EVs direct to consumers. A group of VW and Audi dealers in Florida filed a lawsuit against Scout, claiming the brand really isn't independent from the Volkswagen Group since VW owns and controls 30% of Scout. Under Florida law, that 30% means that VW and Scout are common entities. The dealers say that unless Scout sells vehicles at their stores, they'll be in violation of state franchise laws. They say Scout cannot even take deposits from customers. The Florida dealers are the first to actually file a lawsuit. At the end of last year, the California New Car Dealers Association sent a cease and desist order to VW over selling Scouts directly, and they'll likely follow with a lawsuit unless VW and Scout comply. But in South Carolina, where Scout is building its $2 billion assembly plant, a bill was introduced in the House of Representatives that would allow Scout to sell direct. And while the bill has bipartisan support, the South Carolina Automobile Dealers Association says it opposes the legislation. Auto Forecast Solutions reports that the Scout Traveler SUV is supposed to start production in March of 2028. But depending on how this all goes, it may be illegal for people in South Carolina to buy them. But despite all the turmoil and upheaval going on in the auto industry right now, Ferrari didn't even notice. It had a strong year in 2024, and it expects to do better this year. It sold 13,752 cars last year, which was less than a 1% gain from 2023. Sales were up in all regions, except for China, where they slumped 22%. But despite the drop in China and the small overall sales gain, Ferrari's revenue increased nearly 12% to 6.7 billion euros. Its operating profit of 1.9 billion was up about 17%, and net revenue increased 21% to $1.5 billion. Ferrari expects to hit most of its high-end profitability targets for 2026 1 year in advance. January sales were up slightly in the U.S. according to Automotive News. Since several automakers report sales on a quarterly basis, it only has the numbers for 6 automakers. But those automakers, including Ford, Honda, Hyundai, Mazda, Subaru, and Toyota, sold just under 600,000 vehicles last month, up 1.7%. The Hyundai Group and Mazda performed the best, both increasing U.S. sales by double digits, while Ford had a rough January, selling about 142,000 vehicles, down 6.5%. Right now, sales for the full year in the U.S. are forecast to come in anywhere between 15.6 and 16.2 million units. And speaking of sales, yesterday we reported that Tesla sales are falling in Europe, but they're also going down in the U.S.'s biggest EV market. For the first time, the California New Car Dealers Association reported a yearly drop for Tesla registrations, which were down 11.6% compared to 2023. A number of other automakers, including Chevy, Polestar, Volvo, and especially VW, also saw big double-digit drops in reservations. But as a whole, California's EV registrations were up 1.2% last year. It would have been up 20% if you exclude Tesla, but that's only because Tesla controls more than 50% of California's EV market. And here's one way it might be able to increase sales. Tesla is offering an insurance discount to owners in Texas and Arizona the more they use supervised FSD. It's based on total miles driven versus miles driven on FSD over a 30-day period. Tesla says the maximum discount owners can get is up to 10% off certain coverages when they drive 50% or more on FSD. While that will be a benefit for owners, Tesla will also get a boost in data, which it can use to better train its system, as well as to launch unsupervised FSD, which is supposed to come out in Austin, Texas later this year. So it's probably not a coincidence that this discount is being offered in Texas as well.
Developing today's vehicles, issues can happen in an instant. What good is knowing your problems without the data to solve them? Meet Wireless Neovi Cloud, your secure off-the-shelf solution, empowering real-time collaboration for quick resolution. With Wireless Neovi Cloud, your team can prevent issues before they can escalate. Driver communication data and remote diagnostics to analyze and resolve your problems using OTA, allowing your executives oversight throughout the process. Wireless Neovi Cloud, your vehicle update solution in production and on the road. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
GM is cutting a shift at the plant where it makes EVs in Mexico, which will eliminate about 800 jobs. But it's not related to any tariffs. While part of the decision is based on GM adjusting its own production mix, the automaker claims the move is mainly due to Honda reducing its volume of the Prologue EV. As you may know, GM builds both the Chevy Equinox EV and the Honda Prologue in Ramos Arizpe, Mexico. Honda didn't confirm anything, but says moves like this are normal to make sure its production and inventory are in line with customer demand. However, customer demand for the Prologue seems to be quite good. Sales kicked off in March of last year, and Honda sold over 33,000 examples in the US in 2024, which was more than the Chevy Equinox or Blazer EVs. But Honda is moving away from GM's Ultium platform for its EVs. It will start launching its own dedicated electric vehicles next year that are built on its own EV platform at its own EV manufacturing hub in Ohio. Former Nissan executive Greg Kelly lost an appeal to have his conviction overturned in his alleged involvement in the Carlos Ghosn scandal. Kelly was accused of helping former Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn of concealing tens of millions of dollars in postponed compensation, which prosecutors say should have been disclosed to shareholders. In 2022, Kelly was convicted on one of 8 counts of financial misconduct by the Tokyo District Court. He was eventually allowed to return to the U.S. after his original trial, since he spent 3 years in Japan fighting his case in court. Kelly appealed the guilty verdict, but the Tokyo High Court just upheld the conviction. Kelly, who denies any wrongdoing, is planning another appeal. Ford carved out a nice section of the market for its Maverick pickup when it was launched nearly 4 years ago, with sales running around 130,000 units a year. And now the company wants to leverage that success by coming out with an electric version. Auto Forecast Solutions reports that the Maverick EV will go into production in April of 2027. AFS says the truck, with the code name P833, will be tooled for 100,000 units a year. And curiously, it will be built at the company's assembly plant in Louisville, Kentucky, and not at its plant in Hermosillo, Mexico, where the ICE version of the Maverick is built. Louisville is where the Ford Escape is made, and since the two of them will be made side by side, that strongly suggests that Ford will be coming out with a BEV version of the Escape as well. Audi is changing up the naming structure for its vehicles a little bit. It will still use the letter A for sedans and Q for crossovers and SUVs, and body styles like Avant and Sportback. But even and odd numbers will no longer provide a distinction between powertrains. The numbers will now signify positioning in the lineup. Smaller numbers for smaller vehicles and bigger numbers for bigger vehicles. Audi is also separating any powertrain distinction from the names of its vehicles. So, for example, the all-electric Q6 e-tron will now just be the Q6 with an e-tron badge stuck to the side, while the ICE version will also be the Q6 with a TFSI badge to the side. The upcoming gas-powered A6 will be the first to adopt the new naming structure. And that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for making Autoline a part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering boost your game. And by Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility.
Performance that shines, even in the rain. That's what really matters. Bridgestone Potenza tires, improved grip in wet conditions.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.